Good evening, everybody. I'm your host, Crystal, and this is another edition of the 9 O'Clock Meltdown podcast. And over speakerphone, you heard a quick click there. I have the wonderful and talented Bo Allen. Bo is a filmmaker, a stay-at-home dad, a musician. He's worked out in Nashville, California, and everywhere else, and now is up north here. Hello.
That is correct. Yeah, that's me.
Wonderful. Bo, how did you get your start? I mean, let's start at the beginning, shall we?
It depends on what start you're talking about. I've started a lot of things. I'm like the Forrest Gump of the ages, I guess.
Okay.
I've started so many different careers in my lifetime. But I guess the music was the first thing. I mean, I was a young guitar player, wanted to play like Eddie Van Halen and sing like Steve Perry, which didn't turn out. But yeah, later on, just after working jobs and not really finding anything I loved, I just kind of got bit by the songwriting bug and met some songwriters and who had some success, and they were in Lexington, which was about 3.5 hours from Nashville. Mm-hmm. And I just got kind of in a circle of people, and I started learning more about, the songwriting profession. And I'd written some songs, but I never really thought seriously about them. And eventually, I just started writing more and more and getting more inspired. And then that led me to Nashville. And after a few, demos and sending things out in the mail, I ended up publishing deal. Mm-hmm. And I moved to Nashville, and I just started, kind of cutting my teeth as a songwriter. And
are you from Nashville?
No, I grew up I was born in Ohio.
Okay.
And grew up in a little town called Harlan County, Kentucky. It's real small. It's a coal mining town.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, with very interesting history there. Lots of immigrants, actually. Back in 20s, 30s, 40s, around that time, there was, it was a boom town because of the coal industry. So you had a lot of... you had, a lot of Irish, Welsh. I mean, there was just a big mix of people there. And it was created a real interesting bunch of towns and communities,
Yeah, sounds like it. Definitely. Sounds a lot kind of like up here, up north. We've got the taconite mines and railroading and everything else. So sounds familiar is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty up here too. I've been living up here about a year and a half now, I guess, going on.
Okay. So what made that transition? You were living in Nashville then?
Yeah. So after years in the music industry and touring and with a band and pursuing that seriously as an artist, I just kind of lost my passion, and I'm not one to hang around too long. Once I lose my passion in something, it's just kind of gone, and I'm moving on to something else. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of where I was at in life. And my wife, she wanted to really, work in a hospital that was challenging and exciting. So we were like, well, let's move to Nashville. At the time, I was getting more involved in the film industry.
Okay.
And working in a multimedia company that I formed with a couple of guys, and we started doing more stuff in Nashville. So we were like, well, let's move to Nashville. You got Vanderbilt Hospital there. That'd be great for you. And for me, I'd be closer to Nashville since we're doing a lot of work in Nashville. So that kind of began a new chapter and a new passion in my life when I picked up the camera and started just making little home movies with my daughter, And that turned into a passion. And first thing I know, I'm doing music videos for artists who I knew, and after that, it just kept snowballing. I was shooting commercials and promo videos and process videos and commercials and things like that. So that's when the whole interest in filmmaking and photography and all that began.
Are you self-taught in photography and video?
Yeah. So just like music, when I started playing guitar, I was 13, I guess. I was surrounded 3 really great guitar players.
Okay.
An older gentleman who played jazz and lots of old fingerstyle picking And then another guy who was in the bluegrass music, and he was really good. He was closer to my age. And then another guy who was the rock guitarist, and he was close to my age. So I had that circle of people, and so I was used to being, I guess, self-taught. They would show me something, and then I would just practice, and I picked up a lot of stuff on my own. But it just took me a little bit to get started, and then my passion took over, and then my drive to learn, and I just practiced all the time. So it was same thing kind of with the camera. Once I learned the basics from a couple of friends, then I just started, going out and shooting and experimenting and trying different things, and watched a lot of YouTube videos, learned a lot that way. But yeah, I'm still learning. I'm always learning.
And that's a good spot to be. I mean, once you kind of stop learning, then your life is stagnant, right?
Right.
Bo, let's talk a little bit about, you said that the passion and the drive kind of takes over, but then once it's kind of used up or dried up, you tend not to stay in that area. Let's talk a little bit about your music career and kind of where that was going. You had mentioned that you had done some touring, and had some publicity out in Nashville and things like that. I mean, that's pretty big. That's pretty huge. How far did that actually take you?
Well, if I had known how hard it was to break into the music business, I probably wouldn't have tried. So me just being naive, I thought, well, I'm going to write songs, and they're going to listen to them, and they're going to like my stuff, and I was just that naive to think that it would be that easy, but it turned out it was that easy, and I don't know what to credit that to, but it was surreal for me, because I had started mailing my demos to any record label that would accept them. So I just started seeking out addresses of publishing companies and record companies and anybody that would take them. And I started getting a couple of, phone calls, and there was a gentleman that worked for Allen Dec, and he called, and they were working with an artist, and they talked about possibly cutting one of my songs for them. And that led to a couple of meetings, and then I got the big one from Alan Reynolds, is Garth Brooks' producer. He's with them through all the early stuff and all the big hit records. And so Alan ended up with my CD. I was able to mail it straight to him. I think it was Jack's Tracks in Nashville. And he listened to it, and he wrote me a handwritten note, and I don't think I kept it. I wish I had it. Oh. Yeah, I know, right? Stupid. He said, "Hey, I'm retiring basically, but I listen to your stuff, and I'd be willing to, take a meeting with you if you'd like." And then after about a month of trying to get a meeting with this guy, I kept calling, leaving messages and stuff. I started feeling like I was getting the blow off, but we set a meeting, and I drove down and spent about an hour and a half with him, and then he told me all the cool Garth stories. And then he asked me, how can I help you, and I said, well, I'd love to, meet, Garth's manager and work with those people. And he picks up the phone while I'm there in the office and says, "Hey, I got a guy I want to send over to you." So he set up a meeting with Garth's manager, Bob Doyle, and next thing I know, I'm in his office playing my songs, and that began about a 2-month courtship, meeting, other songwriters and staff people there, and getting to know them. And they sent me to California, and I'm writing with Garth hit writers. And, and oddly enough, during that time, there was also my roommate who, we both needed to be in Nashville at the same time. She was pursuing a career, and she got hooked. She got, in with Toby Keith people. Mm-hmm. And they had come to see us do a show. It was her showcase, but they were able to hear me too, because I sang some songs of my own. And they offered me a contract. So it was weird. I had 2 contracts, one from Toby Keith and Show Dog, his company, and then one from Major Bob Doyle and Garth Brooks' company, staring at me. And I'm like, this is crazy, So I signed with Major Bob and stayed with them about 3 years, and wrote with a lot of, hit writers, cut a lot of demos, and I had some cuts. I never had anything that hit big, but I was happy and proud of what I'd done, in the time I was with them, But I had other dreams. I wanted to get out on Nashville. I hated being in rooms, writing songs. I wanted to be on the stage, and I was wanting to move faster than they were wanting to move with me, and They were actually trying to help me, but I didn't know it at the time.
Oh.
They were trying to groom me into the songwriter that I could have been, and eventually probably an artist with, better success. But you know what? It's all part of life and learning. I had a lot of good experiences.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of sounds like you use the term grooming, and I've heard that off and on from many other artists as well. They try to kind of put you in a box or try to mold you to what they think will sell records and things like that. But with your time, kind of with Garth Brooks and his multitude of writers and things like that, was that where you were? You were kind of more a studio artist than anything else?
Yeah, so I had no idea how the whole thing worked until I signed my publishing deal. So they had heard some of my songs, and the first time that I took songs to them after I had signed my publishing deal, I was anxious to get in there and sit down and play them my new songs. This is what I've been doing since you guys signed me up and started paying me. Mm-hmm. I played them, I think it was 9 songs that I thought were good songs. And they barely liked one. I mean, they basically critiqued it to death, right? And cut, just all the other ones were just like, kind of like, okay, this is okay. But,
yeah.
So I left there feeling really deflated and defeated. Like, oh my God, what have I done? I just signed a publishing deal with these guys, and they've heard my best stuff, and they don't even like it. So mm-hmm. I was really, it was a hard pill to swallow. But what it did is, it made me a better songwriter. And the way that happens is, up until that point, I've only written songs by myself. But you get in these rooms and it's like dating. It's like a first date. All of a sudden, you're sitting in a room with a couple of people or one person, and you don't know them from Adam, and you're expected to like write something amazing. So there's that moment of awkwardness and getting to know each other, and then hopefully you'll stumble upon an idea, and it takes off, and everything. But I'd never done that before. But that's the way it happens. But I ended up writing a lot of songs that I never would have written before. There's no way I would have written half of what I wrote when I was there on my own. I would have taken them different places. The choruses would have been different. They would have had different melodies, but it's cool because I got to see what it was like to take 2 heads and put them together, or even 3 sometimes. And then come out with a song on the other end, and then watch it go through the creative process in the studio. But the grooming process is really interesting. It's not. I don't think it's so much that they want to mold you into something else. I think they're trying to get you to dig and reach for things you've never reached for, and go places in your songwriting that you haven't been before. Mm-hmm. And really just search yourself out, and just to try to make you a better musician and songwriter.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you were doing these studio sessions, I mean, was it about your music? Were you writing for someone else at the time? Were they trying to, stretch your limits of creativity?
Well, the thing is, and thank you so much for doing this. I mean, I love talking about this. Not that I'm the most interesting person in the world or anything, but it's stories that I love to share, and mm-hmm. Hopefully someone can get something out of it. But I wasn't writing for me or anybody in particular. You just really just want to try to write something amazing. That's always the goal. It's not just to write a song. It's to like, hey, is there an idea that's like super cool, like a really, really cool idea? And it's always about that, pushing yourself to try to, write something that hasn't been written before, mm-hmm. or saying something that's been said a million times, saying it in a different way. So that's always kind of the goal, for these writers. And occasionally, they would throw us a bone and they would say, hey, guess what? Tim McGraw's looking for, a song about a, pickup truck. Like there's not enough of this. And, and they would give us a direction, to kind of like, hey, you might want to try to write a song about a pickup truck because Tim McGraw wants one. So every now and then they would throw us those bones, and you would know that somebody's looking for that type of song. And if you wrote one, good. And if not, mm-hmm. so be it. But Yeah.
Gotcha. Very cool. Bo, do you have any EPs out that people could listen to, or any of your music out there that people can find?
That's the funny thing is when I hit the road as an artist, I had already recorded about, I don't know, 15 to 20 songs, but they were more demos. They were stuff that I cut in Nashville, and it was never like a part of a project. It was never like, hey, I'm working on my EP, and I was writing songs with a purpose, and they were going to be on this album that had a theme. And they're always just kind of random stuff. So if you listen to one song, the very next song is going to sound like something else, and so it really had no direction. So I never, ever, in all my years of playing, I never put together like a thought out project. I guess the most thought out project I ever put together was when I was 15. I actually did a gospel album when I was 15 years old. That was my first experience in the studio. Yeah, to this day, I'm sitting there going, you know what? I think I may need to at least once in my life, go in and do like an EP or something that's got put a little thought behind,
There you go. Excellent. Even if it's 3 songs, right?
Yeah, right.
Fabulous. Bo, let's jump back a little bit. You said you cut a gospel album when you were 15? What was that experience like? Did your parents help you out with that one? Did you save pocket money to go in the studio? How did that come about?
Yeah, well, I started playing guitar at, age 13. And once I got, I guess about a year and a half into it, I was singing. I was singing as a kid, like 5 years old. I was singing. My mom used to bribe me with cheeseburgers from Dairy Queen if I would sing in church. So at an early age, she was always pushing me to sing, and I was in some plays and things. But singing was, I don't know. The guitar was my passion. Singing was something I just did, and I didn't think a whole lot about it. But when I got up to about 15 years old, so I was raised in church where I come from. It's just everybody goes, right. Everybody goes to church, and singing's a big thing, and it's that Southern gospel, that you hear, and it's really the bluegrass and the folk and the Southern gospel all go hand in hand. So it was just kind of like natural for me to fall into that, and I started singing at other churches. And I guess I didn't realize it at the time, but I guess the entertainer in me was coming out too. I enjoyed being in front of people, and I enjoyed singing and having people clap their hands and sing along and things. So I went to the studio one time, and I was just in awe of the whole process. And I was like, I want to come here and I want to do my own music. So I just started, saving money, and then people from the church, would slip a 50 in my hand, and I saved enough money, and I think probably about, I don't know, it's probably about $1,200 back then to go into a studio and cut a whole album, but yeah, so I guess it started a lot earlier than I thought. Huh?
Fabulous. And then it sounds like that led you to Nashville. Sounds like you worked with some people from Tim McGraw's world and several others, and now you do film.
Yeah, it was odd. Never knew who I was going to meet, including Garth. I'm at the publishing company one day, and the door opens, and you always heard the bell, when it opened up. And I poked my head around the corner, and I freaked out because it was Garth, just walking in like anybody. And I was like speechless. So I went in and popped into the office of one of the guys there, and he goes, "What is it?" Because he's seen my face, like, you've seen something. I must have had that look on my face. He's like, "What is it?" And I said, "Guess who just came in?" He was like, "Who?" I said, "Garth Brooks." He's like, "Oh, Garth's here." Like it was no big deal.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, he's here," and he's like, "Oh, have you met him?" I was like, "No." "Do you want to?" "Yes." So, Garth was like a big, I was a big fan back then. And so it was weird because, being in that circle of people, I never knew who I was going to meet. I'd bump into Jeff Daniels, the actor. He'd be coming out of the bathroom there in the break room, and, "Oh, hey, how you doing, Jeff Daniels?" And turn around, and there's, you never knew. It's, Dolly Parton. I mean, it was just funny because you're there, but but you're also like not there. You're so far removed from that level of fame and success, you're able to be in the room and everything. So it was really cool.
Well, awesome. It sounds like you have a lot of great stories from your time in Nashville and kind of being on the Nashville circuit. Bo, if we can jump ahead a little bit. So you'd mentioned earlier that you kind of just lost your passion for the music and the music game, it sounds like, and kind of turned to filmmaking. Can we talk a little bit about that kind of transition period for you? So you
Sure.
worked in the Nashville kind of studio circuit for, what did you say, 3 years?
Yeah, I was in the writing on Music Row for 3 years. They gave me the option to pick up another year. I didn't feel it, and I just can't. I just couldn't do it because I thought, well, if I do another year, I'm going to stay gone and I'm not going to be here. I mean, I was blowing off writing appointments and stuff, and I'm sorry, but that's just how I am. I'm kind of like, once I'm done, and I knew it was time to move on. My place, I felt like, was on the road and out there with the people, entertaining. That's what I loved, and that's what really was driving me. Was just, I was missing being in front of people, and I didn't feel like they wanted to support me in that way, at least not at that point in my life. So I just, declined to sign another year. I stayed out on the road a little bit longer, and I just finally hit that wall. A lot of things happened, and I got married in 2010, and it was just time to hang it up. I sold everything except for my acoustic guitar. I had studio gear. I had, everything you could think of music-wise, and I just, and then I just became, dormant for about, I don't know, almost 9 years, I guess.
Oh, wow.
I didn't perform. I didn't play out anywhere. I just had no desire. I think I was burnt out, for that time in my life. And then it just became all about, my role as stay-at-home dad. I embraced that. I became a good cook at home, and a good Mr. Mom, and I didn't regret anything. I was just ready to move on,
Right. Yeah, and it sounds like that was a great experience for you. It taught you a lot, and it taught you how the industry works and kind of what's expected of who and what and when and where. What did you do in those 9 years that you were not doing music? Did you pick up kind of the odd job here and there? Did you help friends? What was that time like?
Well, oddly, I was living in Lexington, Kentucky at the time, and met someone through a friend of mine. They said, hey, this girl needs a guitar player, and there's somebody helping them, and they're trying to make it big in the industry. So I became sort of like this go-to for, artists who were trying to make it in the business, and I would do consultations and mentoring and things like that. And then that led to, a publishing deal. It was weird because in Lexington, Kentucky, that's not what you would think about, scoring a publishing deal in Lexington. But this guy wanted to put together an independent label and wanted a songwriter, and we got to know each other. And once he learned, my past and everything, he offered me a deal. So I started writing for him, and I was like heading up his A&R department for his label. So I would find talent and bring them to him, and we would work with them and help them, go through the processes of, if they needed a demo or if they needed help, just getting started. So that started that journey, and so I was doing that. I was working with an independent label, and then that transitioned into, we formed a media company, me and a couple of guys, and started putting together concepts for TV and for film, and we worked our butts off, and we landed a couple of episodes of a TV show on a network called GAC in Nashville. It was a boy band that we discovered through a friend of ours. We did a show based on those guys. It aired, 2 episodes. It was placed in the worst possible placement on a Saturday during college football.
Oh no!
So nobody's seen it. But and from there, the rest of the time was just spent, working with this media company. We did some music videos. We worked with Brooke Hogan, shot some stuff for her, and just did what we could to stay busy.
Yeah.
Never really had great success, with that company, and we dissolved the company. not long after I moved to Nashville, and then that's when I started taking up the camera and doing my own
Mhm.
thing.
Okay, all right. But it sounds like you learned a lot from kind of helping these independent artists and helping these people move along. What's your biggest takeaway from kind of more the commercial music industry to the independent industry? I mean, what's the biggest contrast for you?
Well, it's about, it's business. And I think that's the thing that everybody learns once they're, once you get into it and long enough, you realize that it is business. If you take away, the artistry and all that, it really comes down to like nickels and dimes and budgets and, and all that. So, just learning that part about it. The contrast for me is that, the big labels and things like that, they're looking out for themselves. And it is all about business, and it is political, and there's just so many things that I just learned and I just didn't like too much. And then you contrast that with the independent artist, which is really cool now because you don't need a label. That's the great thing about where we're at today. You don't need labels. You don't need a record deal to be successful. With streaming and YouTube and the ability to just make your own, develop your own brand and promote it and do it your own way. It's just the sky's the limit. Now, which is really cool.
Right, definitely, definitely. And Bo, I mean, we were talking a little bit earlier when we had first met, and we're roughly the same age. We grew up in that era of you needed to cut the cloth and be in a label and be in the magazines and ba da 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 da. There wasn't YouTube. I mean, there was, but it isn't what it is now. I mean, there was no social media. You got your information from whatever they put on, TV in front of your face. So it was that rat race almost. And now,
yeah, for sure.
And now anybody can, put out their heart's desire and say what they want to say. And I mean, sky's the limit, like you said, on all of that. And now, Bo, to kind of get into it, so you're stay-at-home dad, you've done filmmaking now for a bit, and you actually have your own filmmaking kind of company and creative process there. So you're definitely up on YouTube, and you definitely have your fingers in this cookie jar. So let's get into it. Your filmmaking company.
Yeah. Yeah. So it just started with music videos. I did the first one for free for a friend of mine that I have known since he was 10 years old. And I, just spent the whole day, like 15 hours of shooting on a camera that it actually broke halfway through the shoot.
Oh,
I had to borrow a lens to put up to the camera, and it was crazy, but I managed to get through that. That just led to more music videos with a budget, and then a bigger budget, and then some commercials and some public service announcement type stuff. Worked with a charity, and I was just learning as I went, and I started working with other filmmakers who were successful in Nashville, and they were kind of teaching me the ropes and everything, and that allowed me to get into some pretty high profile places and work on some pretty high profile projects. And I was just just soaking it all in, so I just grew a little bit at a time, but I've always been it's just me, I'm a freelancer. So if I need help, I'll go find someone to help me, and that's why a lot of filmmakers do it these days, because budgets, typically it's hard to get budgets to support, companies, because you got to have crew and all that stuff. But most everybody kind of works in a piecemeal kind of way. You just grab a lighting technician and a second shooter and bring them along, when you have budgets to work with. But I just learned how to shoot stuff on my own. I just tried to make what I've always tried to do in the filmmaking stuff is I've always tried to make it look like it's a bigger production with a big budget when it's just me behind the camera and like moving cameras around and shooting from multiple angles, and just to try to be creative. I don't know. I've kind of learned how to do a lot with a little. So I guess that's kind of like what I've gotten pretty good at, I guess, is just trying to be really resourceful, and because it's hard, you don't always have the budget, but if you have the creativity, I think creativity can trump a budget. It's just just takes a little extra work. And
Right, right. So kind of back to being resourceful and almost kind of like that independent artistry is coming out again.
exactly.
Wonderful. And now you're up here in the Northland from nice warm Tennessee. Welcome to the winter again.
Yeah, right. A little different.
just a little bit. So
No, but
how
it's beautiful. I love it.
Oh, good, good. I'm glad. I'm glad. How has filmmaking been up here for you? Have people been pretty receptive to it? Do you have a client base?
Yes. So I fantasized, and when I was in Nashville, because I was getting ready to leave, everything that I had known behind. I was thinking, oh gosh, what am I doing? Nobody knows me up there. In Nashville, I'm only 3.5 hours away from Lexington, where I, was still getting lots of work from there. And another couple of hours, I'm in my hometown. So I'm getting work there too, shooting, photos and whatnot. So I had this, within a 300-mile radius, I still had a lot of places that I could work and people that knew my work and everything. And I'm getting ready to leave all that. So when I was fantasizing, thinking, what's it going to be like when I move up here? And the thing I was hoping, that I would bring something that maybe that Minnesota hasn't seen, or it had a little bit of an edge, or something that I've learned, and maybe my eye looks a little different than in somebody else's eye up here, and that would get noticed. So that was kind of my hope. So when I moved up here, being a musician, I'm comfortable with musicians, and I can talk to them, and so I just started going out to every bar and venue that I could find when I was here, and I would just go up to the bands, and I'd have my camera, and I'd say, hey, you mind if I shoot some video? And then I would give them a card, and then I would shoot a little bit of video, and then I would put together a little promo video for them, and I would send it to them and say, hey, hope you like this, and that just led to them hiring me to come and shoot photos and videos and stuff, and the feedback was good, so that's kind of how I kind of broke into the world up there, of filmmaking is through the musicians, because that's where I'm at home. I can relate, to those guys and girls best and songwriters. And so that's how it all got started,
Yeah, perfect. Wonderful to hear. And now, Bo, what does your equipment setup kind of look at? Is it just a kind of more of a point and shoot camera? Is it one of those full blown TV cameras? What are we talking about?
It's ever evolving. So right now I've got mirrorless cameras, and I'm a Sony shooter. I started with Nikon, went to Canon, and then I went to Sony. Once I had Sony, I just loved it. I don't know, just something about it. So I stuck with Sony. So Sony cameras, lenses are just a mixed bag of different ranges, different focal lengths, and my photo studio has got a bunch of lights and umbrellas and soft boxes and a bunch of drapes and backdrops, and I've got the drone and the gimbal and all the little gadgets that you see that the filmmakers are using these days, and I can just about pack everything in my backpack and carry it.
Well,
so
you go.
I've learned to cram a lot of stuff in just a little bit of space too.
Yeah, and it makes it easy to maneuver around as well.
Gosh, yeah.
Me, I'm still rocking the shoulder bag and the one camera, but I make it work.
Nice. Well, the funny thing is, it's like the more technical stuff I get and everything, I go back to the handheld film, the handheld techniques and stuff that I was using when I filmed that very first music video.
Yeah.
I still go back to that, and I love it. Some people prefer all of their shots to be, smooth and steady and just motionless almost, just smooth as silk. And I think there's a time for that and everything in a place and a certain shot for that. But man, I just really love feeling that camera in your hand and just holding it, all the movements and everything with just handheld. If I don't know, you feel more connected to your subject or something.
Yeah, and I think people, when they watch that too, it seems more authentic as well. And authenticity has really had a resurgence in the last 5 years or so. Because, 5 years ago, everything was done on, a tripod, and it was, not necessarily a static shot, but everything was smooth. Transitions were smooth. There was no, amateur hour going on. And now, I think also with the rise of social media and TikTok and Instagram, I think that authenticity, that kind of raw feel, has really made a resurgence and come back again. And it's interesting kind of seeing the statistics and the contrast between, somebody that may be a little bit more amateur compared to a big studio. 9 times out of 10, the audience is gravitating more towards that amateur.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to say amateurs and they don't know anything. I mean amateurs and you can't afford a $10 million studio in a day.
Yeah.
That's
well,
what
you got to work. You have to work harder, because if you don't have those huge budgets and you don't have that, this equipment that's, like you said, $50,000, red cameras and all that, then you have to work harder. You have to be smarter, and you have to be more creative, with what you're making, and you have to figure out ways to look great without having all that. You don't have crews of people and effects teams and all that stuff, to take the footage to say, here, make this look amazing. Yeah, you're doing it all yourself, so and I think it's making better. It's just making better cameramen and better artists all around, better, because you have to use your imagination. You have to really strive and push harder and work harder,
Yeah, wise words, wise words. Bo, if somebody's interested in hiring you out for a photo shoot or a video or something like that, a consultation, how can they do that?
My website is BoPro Video. So it's like a GoPro, but it's BoPro. So BoPro video.com. You can reach me that way. You can, fill out the contact form and all that. Send me an email. I have a Facebook page like everybody, and an Instagram, but you can find me at BoPro on Instagram, at BoPro Video and at BoPro Photo. I mean, other than that, you can just, or my phone number. Hey, there's always that.
Perfect. And don't worry, Bo, I won't be giving your phone number out at the end of this.
I don't mind. Actually, yeah, you could just totally just blast it wherever. I don't care.
Sounds good. Well, Bo, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with me and the wider world this evening. I wish you the best of luck in the future with your videos. Maybe we'll hear an EP from you in the future.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Anything is possible in this day and age.
I've really had a good time. Thank you.
Wonderful, Bo. Wonderful. Well, best of luck, and we'll chat soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.